After having opened a boutique in Manhattan, Candlelight, and her own in Ponyville, Rarity had been planning to open another boutique, but in what location would be the best? She had several options like Baltimore, Trottingham, or even Crystal Empire, even though she hadn't even been able to decide from which location. So, with her help from Twilight, they traveled to different places like around in Trottingham and Baltimore to find any suitable place that could be suitable for her next boutique. Even though the many different places were had this very special location, but Rarity still hadn't even decided yet until they had gone to see in Crystal Empire. Because before she could decide from which place that she wanted to open her next boutique. Even though the Twilight agreed, some of the places in Baltimore and even Trottingham actually had a good atmosphere. It was good closer to the center, downtown center. It was open for the main streets, but they weren't. Before she wanted to complete her decision, she wanted to go to traveling to Crystal Empire, just for in case to see if there was any places that could be perfect for a boutique. And even if she would have opened one in, like in Crystal Empire, she might have decided maybe open another one, maybe in some distant future, maybe in Trottingham or Baltimore. But she wanted to open one boutique at a time because if she opened too many at a time, it might hurt. She might be a little bit hard to figure out from try to she wouldn't be able to handle all of their location at once, even though she would hire more ponies to look after her store. But when they arrived to Crystal Empire, they were greeted by a royal guard by the name Flash Sentry, who was in fact a good friend to Twilight. They were taken to the palace first for so having some lunch with Cadence and Shining Armor. After all, they arrived around lunchtime. Cadence was actually happy to know that was really happy that Rarity had considered to open a boutique either in Trondheim or Baltimore or perhaps even in the Crystal Empire. But Rarity said that she needed to look around for a place that might be a suitable place for a possible boutique, even if she would open in the Crystal Empire. And even though that she hadn't even decided yet, but if she would have both Cadence and Shining Armor's full support in that if that's the decision. After lunch, Rarity walked around alone first, while Twilight staying behind in the palace to spend some time with Cadence and Shining Armor. And even when she walked around, she noticed that Flash was on his regular patrol around town, and they started small talk while Rarity was looking for this boutique place, or if that she wanted to find some could find a suitable place for a future boutique. After they small talked, Rarity had found a perfect spot. It was current unoccupied that could be used for a boutique. But she wanted to decide overnight. So before she headed back to the palace, she started talking to Flash about what he thinks about Twilight, if he likes her more than as a friend. But he said no. He was only like her as a friend because they had, even though they had so much in common, but they tried maybe going on one date before, but it didn't work out. But they remained as good friends. Even the first was a little bit awkward, but they had really worked it out. And even though Flash had mentioned though that he hopes maybe to be able to find his special sound pony one day, even if it would take some time. But if for a moment he is trying to focus on his duties as a royal guard of the Crystal Empire. Back in the palace, Rarity had still not had decided where to open her boutique, but she haven't even told Twilight or Keys of Shining Armor exactly when or where she had decided. But she had also said that maybe around morning next day she would probably have this decision. Even that night, though, Rarity lay awake for most of the time. She was still deciding from which place that she would open her boutique. But she hoped that maybe they would come to her in a dream that will decide from which location it will be perfect. And and she was right. Because middle of the night, she had a dream where she was standing outside her new future boutique on the grand opening. And as she saw, it was in fact in Crystal Empire. And that morning, she had decided she will open in her Crystal Empire with a new boutique. But there was one small problem. Even as she would open it, she had no ponies to hire, because most of the ponies in town in the Crystal Empire were no fashion designers, at least what she knew about. But so that particular morning, the next day, when she had told Cadence, Shining Armor, and Twilight about that she will open a Crystal Empire, but then Rarity asked if there was any ponies in town who were fashion designers or maybe something like that. But Cadence said there were unfortunately no fashion designers in Crystal Empire. But Rarity said that she knew a couple of other ponies that were fashion designers and was willing to relocate to a different new place if she needed some help on that. So for the next couple of weeks, Rarity went back to Crystal Empire to oversee and supervise when the preparations for the new boutique to be opened. That was scheduled to be opened on another 2 weeks, and so far things has gone perfect in order. Even there were some minor setbacks, but were always in they were always in ahead of schedule. And the next 2 weeks that followed afterwards, the boutique was finally ready to be open to the public. Rarity had invited all her friends, even her sisters Sweetabelle and even the other princesses like Celeste and Luna, and the public was excited and eager to know more about this new location. After the grand opening, though, it didn't take long for the public around the entire kingdom became aware of this new boutique, and even that the first few days right back home in Ponyville, was expecting to find some news about this new boutique, some like if there was any positive reviews or was it any negative. But all that she found after about only a few days after it was opened, there was only a small article in the local newspaper mentioning it that even despite this had just been open only for the past few days, it only had positive response. All the customers loved the customer services, even the designs and all the things that they were selling there. Even some of the guest customers who wanted to have some of their designs a little bit changed so it would fit them better, which always worked out. And the Rarity was just happy that this new boutique was for perfectly opening. And for the next couple of days, she went back to Crystal Empire just to see how things are working for the boutique, even despite she knows it has only positive response back though. She had even talked to some of the staff and some of that, and they all said the same thing. All the people in town and even from outside of town has always responding positive. And that made her decided decision to make open at the future boutique in another location. But for now, she was just happy had opened another one. And one of the customers that recently had been there was actually Flash Sentry. That turned out he actually had been there looking for something suitable for the date. When Rarity saw him and asked him, I thought you even said to him that she thought I didn't believe you were going to be dating now, Flash. Well, another mayor had asked me out, and I said yes. I mean, she is beautiful, and she might be the one that for me, he said. So, into helping that, Rarity personally overseen and finding a perfect suit for Flash. And After that, he found it, he paid and thanked her for her help, and went back for his duties. And for the next couple of days after that, though, went to see Rarity in her boutique. They were small talk about some things when suddenly when Twilight just brought up Flash, and it turned out that the date he had wasn't even working out. He was devastated. Had hopes that this mare would be the one that we would be the one for him. Rarity was just devastated himself. She was because as how much he's a very handsome, honest, and even generous kind of pony is. She couldn't even believe that no pony would even fall for him, or want to be with him, or maybe settle down with him one day. Rarity, you're really kind of upset about this, aren't you? I mean, normally you're not it is focused on one particular pony, even as a friend of ours who lives so far away. And Rarity didn't realize it then, but she realized then, just only a moment later, that she did care about Flash. But she believed that was only because they were close friends. But she said that she only cared about this, that she was only thinking about his well-being, and that he would be well taken care of, even despite that no point he probably won't be dating him for a while. Because she mentioned that Flash told her once when they were back in Crystal Empire a weeks ago, he probably would not be focused on dating, but weeks later he was. Rarity was going to be in Crystal Empire within the next month to help around in the boutique. So she may be that when she could ask Flash or something, things like that then. But as the time passes though, things happen for Rarity. Because one day she opens when she in her boutique in Ponyville. She hears the doors open and was expecting to find maybe about some of her friends or another customer. It was in fact a customer, but nonetheless than she would expect it. It was in fact Flash. Flash Sentry had arrived at Ponyville. He said that he had gotten a permission leave from Cadence in Shining Armor, and he was going to visit Twilight for some time, since they hadn't even get much time to spend together as friends though. And he would just wanted to step into her boutique to see how things are going for her in this boutique where all the things started. And she was just happy for the visit though. But it was then when he asked her something that really surprised her. He did ask her out. She never expected Flash of all her friends to ask her out on a date. She asked him at least why he asked her out of all places, of all things, and he said that he had actually did like her more as a friend. But he did understand if she didn't want to go out with him, as that he didn't want to jeopardize a friendship or something. But after she thought for only a few minutes, she said yes. She would like to go out with him, and he had actually decided to take her to the movies, and afterwards to a restaurant nearby located. And she said that she could actually looking forward to this. And after that he had left, she thought about this date. It has been a while even she had been on a date with a stallion. She used to date another stallion only about a year earlier, but that was only about a year ago. She hasn't been on dates since, though. Even her friends was in fact aware about that Flash had asked her out because Twilight was told, and she had told some of her friends, and so as every of her friends was actually aware about this. And the next day, when Flash picked up Rarity at her home, he first took her to movies and both decided to watch a romantic movie, or a more romantic comedy. And they had so much great time, both laughed and just having a perfect moment. And in Rarity's mind, Flash was a true gentle colt. He treated her so well, respectful, and always asked her questions about some things that she didn't want to talk about, and even want to know more about herself. And she even allowed him to. She asked him questions. He always has been like this, like forever. Even after they had left the restaurant, they both decided to walk around before for a little bit while before he followed with her home so she comes home safely. Even after that, Rarity had realized she had actually fallen in love with him, but she wasn't even clear surely if it was strong love or it was just temporary. But Jesus said decide before they decide to take it officially as a couple, she maybe want to go on a few more dates just in case to see if it could work out between them. Because if one date would be too soon to realize that. And he agreed. And while he was staying in Ponyville for about a week though, they went off on some more dates, like some picnics or just having a great time either at the park or in the outside of town where they have just picnics. And each date they went to, Righty realized slowly that she actually were in love with him. And then just before he was about to go back to Crystal Empire, she did ask him if he was so in love with her as well. And he said yes. Because even it took him some time to realize Rarity was the one that he had been looking for. He hasn't felt this connection to any pony for a long time. And he had really hoped to find his true love one day, and he did. And after that, both their friends and family sides were actually excited, and even her mother, Rarity's mother, had hope that Rarity would maybe one day marry Flash. Even she did mention it, but it was more like a teasing, like that. Even though that Rarity deep down, she had also hoped that Flash would propose to her one day and they could start a family. But even she knows that he has just been start dating and want to rush into marriage too soon because it what if they won't work out and you end up married and they have to be divorced first? But in her mind, Flash was actually the very true gentle cold that she had been looking for. And when Spike was told about him that Flash was dating Rarity, he was in fact hurt. But by the time he had actually moved on from Rarity because he had actually in fact told her about his feelings. But she rejected him not such a bad idea because she respected that. And but even at the same time when had revealed his feelings for her, he had been dating Sweetie Belle. And even at around the same time when Rarity even started dating Flash, he just wanted to tell Rarity about his feelings for her in the past, so that she would know about it. And they were actually okay with that. And now Spike was very much deeply in love with Sweetie Belle, and she loved him deeply. The bond between Rarity and Flash remained strong over time. Yet despite that, Flash still has been working in Crystal Empire, and that he couldn't just go to see Rarity as often as he wanted to. But luckily for that, Rarity has just as she had opened her boutique in Crystal Empire, she can go see him as often as she wanted. She can just go have an excuse to go to her boutique in Crystal Empire to see how things are going. And even though she could stay there for a couple of days, she can sometimes between them go to see how the things are in the boutique and go and then spend time with Flash during his breaks or something. And they actually managed to work that out. And each time when Flash had his permission to leave from Crystal Empire, he always went to Ponyville to spend time with Rarity or some other friends, and that also worked out perfectly. And even though when the heartwarming eve was approaching, he had actually been invited by Rarity's mom to be celebrated with them. And Rarity was not aware about it at first when her mom mentioned it. She was not even against the idea, just a surprise that her mom had invited Flash to celebrate with them. And that was not the only part. Sweetie Belle had actually invited Spike also. And even though Rarity thought maybe this would be awkward because since Spike once was in love with her, and now she has also bring her boyfriend, and Sweetie Belle will bring her boyfriend, who used to be in love with her older sister. But she didn't have to worry about it, because on the day in the holiday, there were no such awkward feelings because Spike didn't even mind if that Rarity had brought her boyfriend to celebrate the holiday with them. In fact, that even made Spike and Flash Sentry even closer as friends. They had so much in common though, even despite they were dating and separate each other, one another, two girls were sisters, but he actually liked Flash, and they actually became good friends with that, which was actually that's something Rarity had hoped, and that came true though. But there was one problem for Rarity for because the next year afterwards, she had been so busy with her boutique. Sometimes she was busy with his own fashion shows that came up in Canterlot, and that when Flash had time to spend time with Rarity, she was busy, either in Canterlot or in Manhattan or in Crystal Empire, but majority of the time was either in Manhattan or in Ponyville. And despite the Flash, sometimes when he got there, she may not been there for weeks, maybe for days. When he was about to leave, she returns home and they can only maybe spend maybe 1 or 2 days together. It was many of their friends were expecting or afraid this short time of spending together would tear their relationship apart. That they were afraid they would start argument about they don't spend enough time together, that Rarity would prefer to be working more rather than spending time with Flash, and Flash but just that was like he would prefer to spend time working rather than seeing his own girlfriend. But surprising to all of them, they never actually argued about any of this. They were just, even though they were disappointed that they couldn't even see each other as often that they wanted, but they always worked it out. And even despite that Rarity had a very busy few months of the first new year, but that was only the first few months though, because in the summer she had a lot more time to spend with Flash with work. Because during the first few months of the summer, Flash had 2 months of permission leave from Crystal Empire. That gave them a lot of time to spend together. Because even though he spent maybe as the two first the first month in the Ponyville, they had a lot of fun though, with a lot of movies, they had a lot of picnics, and even had dinners outside the town, and even had dinners at her home. At her home. But during the last month of his stay in Ponyville, he had something planned for her. In fact, this was actually help from Cadence and Twilight. They had arranged for a cruise, which was going to last the last week of his permission leave, and it was going to be a surprise for Rarity, since it's going to be the first year anniversary, and he wanted to make it special just for her. And when he told her, she couldn't even believe it because she had almost forgot about their anniversary. And he was surprised though, because he thought maybe that he had forgotten it and she had it, but both laughed and having a great time though. And even on the cruise, they had just a great time. Despite knowing it's going to be for about a week of cruise, but they spent every single moment together from on the losing time from months earlier. But Flash could have been happier to spend as much time with his beloved girlfriend Rarity on the cruise. But when they came back to Manhattan, Flash told Rarity he decided to spend one more day before with her, even despite he was going back the next day, but he decided to stay one day more. And he believed and he knew he wouldn't be in much trouble if he stayed one day before. And it turned out he actually had asked Cadence for permission, which she granted him. So the next day, when they were still in Manhattan, they spent a lot of time like going to a restaurant, even had some picnics in the park, and just having a great time. Knowing that they will not be able to see each other on for some time after this, and even knowing their love for each other will remain solid, strong. Even Flash one day hoped that he will be able to ask her the big question. But they both had agreed to wait at least been dating for a couple of years just to be sure the relationship remained after all. As they both said, it would have been strange if they got married now, as is early in the start, and if it turned out the relationship wouldn't even work out, and they later could not just leave and see other ponies because they're still married though. But even despite Flash wanting to marry her at some point later on, but they both agreed to wait for it. And then something did happen. Rarity was going to see Flash in Crystal Empire for a visit, a surprise one. But when she got there, she saw Flash with another mare, but she didn't mind because she thought that he was just a friend, and they both were laughing, and she hugged him. But in her mind, that was not much as any strange because friends can always hug each other and laugh together. But she laughed it was like something was going on. So she followed them just for a distance, and it was like they were dating. And in fact, Rarity believed they were in fact dating. She wanted to go up to Flash and ask him, and even confront him about this, but she couldn't. In fact, Rarity was crying. So she went back to the palace where she was staying for the next few days. But when she came back to the palace, Cadence were actually a little bit curious about what happened. But Rarity didn't want to speak. She went to her room, and Cadence had only things if it was something about Flash. So when he came back to the palace, she asked him if something happened between him and Rarity. And he was actually stunned when she even mentioned Rarity, because he was even not aware that Rarity was in fact in the palace, and he was actually even shocked about it, because she had even mentioned that she was coming over to visit, especially now when he found out that she was in the palace crying. He had to basically understand what would happen. So Rarity Cadence suggested to Flash could talk to Rarity about this. So she did. And he did went to her room, knocked on the door. When she heard it was Flash, she was silent. He tried to ask her, but by the door, what he had been doing, what he had done, made her cry so much. At first, Rarity didn't want to answer him though. But after that, he tried at least one more. But when he said, "If you don't want to talk, I will leave you alone, and we'll talk further later on." But just as about him to want to leave, she opened the door, and she was still crying and almost like yelling at him. She said that she saw him with another mare. They were laughing and hugging, and she believed that he had been seeing another mare behind her back, like been cheating. And Flash was just totally shocked about this revelation. He wasn't even confronted. He wasn't even mad at her. Said, The mare you saw was my cousin. She was shocked. She believed that this mare that he had been seeing with, or what spent time with, was actually some mare he had been seeing on the side. But it turned out to be his cousin, who was in Crystal Empire for a visit on himself. And that made her feeling so stupid to making bullies, to making such conclusion before even asking him directly what happened or why he was spending time with the particular mayor. And it turned out though that was his cousin, which they hadn't even seen in a while, who was came over to see him in Crystal Empire, and both were silent, and he started laughing, and she started laughing herself, and apologized to Flash about this stupid conclusion that she believed that he was cheating on her. And he said that he would never do that because he loves her so much, and why would he do that when he loves her so much? And they were talking more about this, and things between them only get stronger. And after that, they had been dating for another 2 more years. Flash came back to Ponyville to ask Rarity for a picnic, and on the picnic, he actually proposed to her. She said yes while crying a lot of tears on her eyes. In both families and their friends were so excited about this big news. And even despite knowing how much they were so much in love with each other, Rarity and Flash were so happy with getting married on that big day. They even went to Las Pegasus for a whole week for the honeymoon. And only about 2 years later, they actually announced they were expecting a baby, a daughter. And then the day came, the daughter was born. They named the daughter Amethyst Rose. Amethyst Rose was actually like her mother. She loved to help around in her boutique in Ponyville. And she actually wanted to be a fashion designer like her mother when she grew up. And even though that she actually sometimes spent time in Manhattan when she got a bit older with Coco Pumel, and even when some spent time with Sassy Saddles in Canterlot. She wanted to be a fashion designer like her mom, and when she was a bit older, she actually decided, even though she could maybe want to be a fashion designer, but she wanted to work one of the boutiques of her mother she had opened. And she decided to go and work with Coco Pumel, who was actually her godmother. And she started working with Coco in Manhattan. And the customers loved her openness, her kindness, generosity, and her personality was so affectionate to every pony that came to the store. And they loved her, always smiling, kind to any pony that came there. Despite those of her ponies were having a bad day, but somehow when she's smiling at them, and it always makes them feeling better. And even to a point when she had moved to Manhattan, she actually fell in love with another stallion who lived in Manhattan, and they even got married after about 4 years of being dating, and they actually had two daughters of their own. 4 years later, they even had another baby, a son which they named Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt was like he's like his father, brave, fast flyer, and strong himself. He usually helped spend time with his father, training to be a strong fighter, and always been there to help to protect his sister if needed, or any opponent in fact. Even though he even spent time with his idol, Shining Armor, in the Crystal Empire. Even that they were actually looked up to him as a great idol, as a great hero. But he always looked up to his father's self also. And his biggest dream was in fact to be a royal guard. And he wanted to be one. So when he was old enough, he applied to the academy of to be a royal guard, and was accepted at the age 19. And even despite it was giving hard time for him in the academy, but he didn't want to give up so easily. Despite having a great father and even a royal guard as Flash Sentry were, his reputation to be the son of Flash was actually not only for making helping around. He actually wanted to work and prove that he can work and be a guard without being having part of a famous father like Flash is. And his determination and his strong determination to be as like his father actually proved to be, and it worked. He actually became a royal guard, but he was not sure where would he end up in. If it was in Camelot, Ponyville with Twilight's Castle, or in Crystal Empire. And even though he had been asked where to be assigned, been transferred from the academy, but he always said, surprise me. And in fact, he actually went end up in Ponyville to be a royal guard to Twilight, which he didn't mind because he actually preferred to be more closer to home though. Since ever since his father became the captain of the Royal Guard in Ponyville, which he didn't mind, and he even became the personal trainer, or at least the recruiter from the new Royal Guards recruits from Ponyville, and one among the Royal Guards in Ponyville was a female guard which he fell in love with. And they even got married after being dating for 4 years. And they actually had one boy and two daughters together. And if that were for Flash, for Rarity and Flash were actually a very strong couple. All the friends of the both families were really happy to see them be married. And they at first didn't even know if the things between them would work out. But Rarity was really happy that Flash actually had asked her out when he came to see her in Ponyville. Because Because if he had even asked her, she would have missed out this true joy and happiness to be experienced to be in love with someone like Flash. Not only that, but to be with someone like Flash who always would be there to protect and always not only protect her, but their family. That was a true Yandakot in her mind. And for Flash though, he was just happy to be there for her and even to be able to find that his true purpose and true love was in fact with Rarity. Even though before he didn't even know if he was going to be with Rarity or that he was maybe would have fallen in love with someone else, but he was happy that Rarity was the one that he was supposed to be with. And this is how Rarity and Flash Sentry found a true love and a big family together. The end.